Hey, what's up guys? Mark here with Hockey Culture Training and Systems. Welcome to part 1 of a 6-part mini-series covering the history and identity of hockey's Big 6 nations. Today, we're starting with none other than the courageous Czech Republic, a hockey nation that has won multiple international championships under a variety of faces and flags, such as the early 1900s. As the Kingdom of Bohemia, the team went on to win a total of 3 gold medals in the European Championships. As the CSSR, a country combined of Slovakia and Czech, they won a total of 6 world championships and became known as one of the best countries to ever play the game of hockey. In the early 1900s, with the fall of communism, the Czech Republic became a lone state, and with that, they went on to win their first Olympic medal in 1998. And so that got me thinking, what separates the Czechs from everyone else in the hockey world? What sort of culture could create legends like, Jan Paluš, or Jaroslav Yevkaski, Bohemia Modry, Josef Maleček, Yuri Holeček, Jaroslav Drobny, Vladimir Zabrzalski, Yuri Holik, Vladimir Martinec, Peter Šťastný, Marian Šťastný, František Pospíšil, Patrik Eliáš, Milan Hajduk, Dominik Hasek, and my personal favorite, Martin Straka. I believe that covers just about everyone. Oh, wait, Jágr. Can't forget Jágr, the living legend, Jaromír Jágr. And so, to answer the question, I think we must first look at the history of hockey within the country as a whole. Where did it come from, and how did it get to where it is today? That's why we start with the Kingdom of Bohemia, which pretty much took up a greater part of modern-day Czech. And the first thing you have to understand is that hockey wasn't really existent in Europe at the time. See, in the early 1900s, the most popular sport was bandy. I won't get much into the details of the sport now, but pretty much it was field hockey on ice. You're looking at 11 on 11, a large net, and a ball played inside of a puck. It was quite popular in most countries of Europe. But around this time, it started to become more apparent that ice hockey, the North American version, would become more of a global sport, played more internationally, and I think a lot of businesses started to thrive on this. As the story goes, however, a traveling Canadian violinist named Anderson had come to Bohemia, and he would share with the local bandy players the difference between his game and theirs. The Bohemian bandy players took quite well to the game. In fact, they inspired a whole new league by creating several local clubs in the area, most specifically Prague. And after a few short years, Bohemia felt quite comfortable to send a team known as the Students of Prague, or otherwise known as the Musketeers, to an unofficial international tournament held in France. Here, they were pretty much embarrassed, having lost all 4 games. One of the original players, Jan Paluš, recalled the experience in Czech radio in a 1956 interview. He says, 47 years ago, we left for Chamonix to take part in our first international ice hockey tournament, but we had no clue about the sport at the time. It was not until we reached Chamonix that we saw for the first time ever a few other players, specifically from Canada, with sticks, proper skates, and a puck. We didn't even know the rules of the game. We were even extremely surprised when we saw the goalposts were not mounted right at the edges of the rink, but with playing space behind. That is pretty amazing to me. I mean, you don't see that in sports today. You're looking at a team that practiced not even on the correct surface, with the correct rules. And at the same time, it's what amazes me about the culture. They didn't give up. They went back to the drawing boards. They changed a few things up. They trained harder. They got a larger group of players, and they came back to win gold in 1911, 1912, silver in 1913, and a gold at the 1914 European Championships. Now, unfortunately, World War I had begun, and the European tournaments pretty much took a break. And as you may know, in the aftermath, we saw the combination of Slovakia and Czech to form one unified state called Czechoslovakia. Now, I definitely don't want to dive into much of the politics in any country I'm going over in these series, especially Czechoslovakia, but it's important to note that the politics did play a role in how hockey was managed, and most sports actually was managed in these countries. The unified state of Czechoslovakia allowed for the country to find even more success in the game of hockey. Czechoslovakia became one of the best countries in the 1900s. I mean, look at the 1940s when Czechoslovakia won back-to-back gold medals. It was a team led by Mutt Buchner. He was a Canadian, asked by Czechoslovakia to come down to the hockey program and to revamp the entire system. He stayed. He coached the junior team, the senior team, established a minor league system, and developed annual hockey clinics. This pretty much led to the future generation of great Czechoslovakian hockey players. Like in the 1970s, where they won gold in 1972 and back-to-back golds in 1976 and 1977. And before I move on from this era, I think it's important to note two important factors about Czechoslovakia during this time. One, truly understand their success. Now, they weren't winning gold medals every single year like, let's say, their rival, the Soviet Union, but they had won a handful of second and third place finishes in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and the 80s for the World Championships and the Olympics. That can't go unnoticed. They were highly regarded as an elite team. Second, it's also important to note that the Czechs were regarded as being the first team to have multiple coaches behind the bench. Before that, you would typically have one coach. Multiple coaches help delegate responsibilities and line changes, and also allow for team sharing. But not everything's meant to last, right? In 1993, Czechoslovakia had split back into Czech Republic and Slovakia. Now this is pretty much for the better and for the worse. But for the Czechs, they loved it. They got their sense of identity back. They built an ice hockey association and a first league all for themselves. And in a few short years, when the Winter Olympics was hosted in 1998, the team went out and battled for the gold. It was a miracle. Now, in America, when we talk about the miracle, we think about 1980, Americans winning the gold and beating the Soviet Union. But this was their miracle. And in many instances, it was probably even more miraculous. I mean, they were a team nowhere near as talented or deep as the Canadians, the Russians, and probably not even the Americans, who had just come off a 1996 World Cup. But when push came to shove, the team stayed in line, they had a system in play, they executed effortlessly, they battled hard, and they won gold. Now obviously a bit of luck was involved, but luck is necessary when a miracle happens. Nevertheless, you're looking at the World Championships. You're looking at the gold medal Olympic champions right here. Now, a big thanks to that 1998 miracle goes to the coach, Ivan Linka, who was also a legendary player during the Czechs' golden years during the 70s and 60s. He was the Czech Republic's Herb Brooks, who as a coach was dedicated to his players, believed in them, and also developed a unique tactic to combat the more skilled opponents on the big ice. It was specifically a system that focused on defense-first hockey and used a counter-attacking approach to offense. Much of that very same system was developed by Ivan's coaches during the 60s and 70s, guys like Vladimir Koska, Jaroslav Pitner, and Vladimir Buzek, who understood two things. You needed elite fitness to compete at the high levels, and they needed to play a strict defensive type of hockey if they wanted to compete. Vladimir Koska is also regarded as the coach who invented the left wing lock, a type of defensive structure which is similar to the trap, but it's a little bit different. In its most basic form, once puck possession changes, the left wing will basically move back in line to the defenseman, creating a 2-on-3 type of forecheck. Each defender plays a zone defense, and now is responsible for their third of the ice. Since there are normally only two defensemen, this tactic helps avoid odd man rushes, which was common against teams like Canada and Russia. And it's important to note that this counterattacking culture and defense-first type of hockey isn't only apparent in the 60s and 70s or 1998, right? You can go back as early as the 50s and 60s where defense-first hockey was very apparent for the Czechs. In 1980, Herb Brooks talks about in his book how he feared the Czechs' counterattacking type of hockey, even though he felt that his team was better than them. And in the early 2000s, where the Czech Republic had experienced some good success in the World Championships, Martin Ruchinsky, a player at that time, talks about what made them so successful. And he was talking about playing strong, smart, defensive hockey. They didn't want to be regarded as boring hockey, but that no player was afraid of taking a shot block, and they were always ready to play hard. And I think it's important to end with this. While today's game is extremely globalized in that you will see a wide range of hockey philosophies and systems being employed by every team, there is no doubt that there's a special identity that is among all these countries, and specifically today in the Czech hockey culture. Such an identity has led to so much success in the past, and with a future filled with so much talent and young players, it will undoubtedly create so much success in the future. Because of this, the courageous Czechs, I believe, will always be part of the game of hockey. Now, thank you for listening. If you guys like this, I only ask you to like the video, share it with among your friends, as I want to continue these type of mini-series and many more videos to come.